And now we welcome to the stage Matthew Dix, everyone. Big round of applause.
There were many reasons for dating Kelly Robertson in the spring of 1993. She was available, which was good. I was 19 and a late bloomer, and I'd only been dating for a year or two, so any girl that was available was good. Guys tend to not have very discriminating tastes early on, so anyone who's not attached is appealing. She had just broken up with my best friend, and he had had sex with her. So considering his level of coolness was like as low as mine, I thought she might have sex with me as well. And so that appealed to me a great deal. But best of all, the thing that she had that no girl I knew had was she had once lived on the same street as New England Patriots quarterback Steve Grogan. She had never met Steve Grogan. She had never spoken to him, and she didn't live on the same street anymore, but she had lived on the same street as New England Patriots quarterback Steve Grogan. And all of those things came together and caused me to ask her out. And Kelly said yes, and we began dating in the spring of 1993. Kelly had some flaws. The biggest probably was that she slept with her eyes open, which is odd, but it's worse because she was one of those girls who likes to wake up in the morning and watch you sleep. So when I opened my eyes every morning and looked at her, I wasn't sure if she was awake and looking at me or whether she was asleep and looking at me. Kelly and I were also on different tracks in life. I was 19 and I had been managing a McDonald's restaurant for 3 years already. I graduated high in my class but was kicked out of my home upon graduating, and I didn't think I'd ever go to college, and I thought that McDonald's was going to be my future. I had convinced myself that if I worked hard, I could work 60 hours a week for $30,000 a year and make a good living for myself at the age of 19. I had always wanted to be a teacher, but I just didn't think I'd ever get to college, and Kelly was going to college for nursing, as were most of my friends. And so on the weekends, I would go with my friends and with Kelly to their school, and I'd try to sort of be a college student, the one I couldn't be. I'd walk around and try to imagine what it would be like to be on a campus, and Kelly would even take me to some of her classrooms and let me sit in a desk and try to imagine what it could have been like for me. So I'd go and I'd visit Kelly a lot at North Adams. And another problem we had is Kelly was a recreational drug user. She liked to get high, and I was not very cool and afraid, so I didn't. I would drink something called Purple Passion. That was my drink of choice. If you don't know it, it was a drink designed for a 10-year-old. It was grape soda and a little bit of rubbing alcohol, and you pretended that you were drunk. And so I would go to North Adams, and we'd spend the day together, and then in the evening, Kelly would go off with her friends to get high, and I would take 4 liters of Purple Passion and go try to find a frat house that would let me in. This was called making our relationship work. I was not very successful. I could not find a lot of frat guys that would let me in with my Purple Passion. But there was an evening when I was walking back to Kelly's apartment, and I walked by a frat house, and there was a large man on the lawn. His name was Jimbo. And it turns out he was a college student. And he was with a bunch of his friends. And he said, "Hey, I need you. Come over here." And a college guy told me he had needed me. And as lame as it sounds, I would have given him anything at that moment. I would have given him 2 kidneys and sold him a spleen and anything else that was not required for me to have. So I went over to the lawn and I said, "What do you need?" And he said, "We need your help." And so he took me into the backyard of the frat house. And in the back, they had a big 40-gallon trash can, and it was filled with punch, spiked punch. And in the middle of it, there was a basketball-sized ball of ice. And inside that basketball-sized ball of ice, there was a red ball, and there was fur and sinew and guts frozen into that red center. Jimbo explained to me that 2 days before, the frat guys had gone out to the street, scraped up some roadkill, and frozen it with red food coloring into this ball, which they then froze into a clear ball on the outside and dropped into the bucket with the spiked punch. And the job was for us to drink the punch before the clear ice melted down to the red ice. I thought this was the greatest thing I had ever heard in my entire life. And so when they asked me if I was willing to drink with them, I said yes. Did we finish that punch by the end of the night? I have no idea. I woke up the next morning in the bed of Kelly's roommate. And all guys will tell you that the roommate is always better looking than your actual girlfriend. And so I turned to the roommate and I said, "What happened?" And she said, "Nothing to write home about." And so I realized that I didn't have any clothes on, and I asked, "Did we have sex?" And she said, "Not really." And so I crept out of that bed and I put my clothes on and I snuck back into Kelly's room and I opened the door hoping to get back into bed without her noticing, but she was lying there staring at me, fast asleep. So I climbed into bed and I began to think about the strange things going on in my life, the freaks I was encountering. This girl that I was lying next to who was sleeping and staring at me, and guys drinking from large trash cans with roadkill in it. And then I realized that who's the freak in the story? The guy who's dating the girl because she once lived on the same street as Steve Grogan? Were the guys who had the roadkill punch the freaks? Or was the guy who happened to be walking by the frat house and trusted the frat guys that they had gotten their combination correct and that the punch was not already contaminated with the roadkill? I stopped going to North Adams State after that visit, and Kelly and I broke up shortly thereafter. I don't know if I don't know how long it took me to stop being that kind of freak and become a different one, but I suppose, I really do believe that if I went back to North Adams today, I think I'd probably find the same roadkill punch, and I'd probably continue drinking it. Thank you.
Matthew Dix, everyone.